Hi Bowl Bakers, I'm excited about this week's recipe for a buttermilk pecan pie. It is a twist on the traditional, but fantastic and a great holiday pie. This is not a complicated pie. The first thing that I did this morning was I made my pie crust. Now I have made this a million times in videos, so you can go check those out. But what I wanted to do in this video is give you my 5 tips for making the best pie crust. So here they are. Tip number 1, use a food processor to make your pie crust. I'll tell you why. So much faster, and because you're not touching the dough with your fingers, it doesn't get buttery and oily. It yields you a really tender pie crust. So use that sucker like nobody's business this holiday season. Number 2, double, triple, quadruple your pie recipes. Make them in advance, wrap them up, keep them in the freezer, and then you have them ready to go. Pie crust freezes beautifully and it is just like new when you go to bake it. Tip number 3, use salted butter in your pie crust. This makes all the difference, a little bit of added flavor. I also will recommend using a European butter like Irish butter because it has a higher fat content and less water, which just yields you like the best pastry. Number 4, not everybody knows this, add a little bit of acid into your pie crust. Just a teaspoon of lemon juice or even vinegar will actually tenderize the flour in your pie crust, making it so crumbly and just really flaky and beautiful. Tip number 5, and this is an important one, too much water. Please do not add too much water to your pie crust. If you do, you end up with a soggy dough and it will shrink a lot once you bake it. You want as little water as possible, just so you can bring your dough together, then roll it out. Okay, so I'm gonna pop this into the fridge while we make our filling. This is my best ever pie crust recipe, which has loads of 5-star reviews. I also have a fantastic buttermilk pastry on there. I have a sour cream one, I've got a creamed one, like really lots of options. So check out biggerbolderbaking.com. Okay, filling, like I said, this is a buttermilk pecan pie. So we're gonna toast our nuts beforehand. If you don't do this, you don't get the lovely caramel kind of like hickory flavor that you normally do from a pecan. So always when you're baking, toast your nuts beforehand and it just makes the world of difference to your recipe. So you want to pop these into the oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 degrees Celsius for roughly around 10 to 12 minutes and get them nice and golden and toasty, and then they'll be ready to be chopped. So our nuts are lovely and toasty. They smell so good. Pecans are definitely one of my favorite nuts. Now all you want to do is just chop them roughly. And just so you know, when you're chopping them, do them by hand and get big bits and small bits. We don't want loads of really fine pecans. We want texture in our pie. Now I am a little bit biased to a pecan pie because when it comes to the holiday season, I'm definitely more team pecan than I am pumpkin. I didn't grow up with pumpkin, so I still find it a little bit odd sometimes. Not every time, but sometimes. Like I'm eating vegetable pie. But anyway, but definitely like maple, salty, caramelly kind of a pie is like right up my alley. And with the addition of the buttermilk, it makes it a little bit creamy, but also gives it a lovely tang, which just works so well because, you know, we have a lot of sugar in here and it just balances the sweetness. So just like this, big lumps, small bits. We're going for texture. Lovely. Okay, so those are our pecans. Now let's talk filling. So I have some eggs here. This is similar to a pecan pie. It is a custardy kind of a base. So it's going to bake up with that kind of jiggle in the slice, you know, the way it kind of gets thick and custardy. We have brown sugar in there. You have to have brown sugar. We have white sugar, just to give us those lovely molassesy flavors. Give those a whisk, all by hand. Just make sure there's no lumps in that brown sugar. Lovely. Into this, let's add in some softened butter. Now you want really softened butter for this recipe because this is what we're going to do with our whisk. We're just going to whisk it in to the pie filling. So you don't want it melted. It needs to be soft enough so it will just cream right in there. And just whisk it until it's smooth and combined. Next up, salt, always. Really complements the nuts, and it's also going to complement the vanilla that we're adding in next. Lovely. And then the star of the show here, buttermilk. You know, buttermilk is such a common ingredient in Ireland and often in Europe. You know, we use it for bread making, different kind of cakes and stuff like that. I think it is kind of the unsung hero when it comes to baking because it is like, It's an easy ingredient to find. It also is like inexpensive. You can also make it using my homemade recipe. All you need is milk and a little bit of acid like lemon juice, and you can make your own at home. But it tenderizes cakes. It adds a flavor to pies. It makes incredible pie crust. It makes lovely bread for Irish soda bread. Like, it really is like such an invaluable ingredient that I don't think gets enough limelight ever. So whisk that in there. And then lastly, we are going to scatter over a little bit of just regular flour, plain flour, all-purpose flour, and then just whisk that in. Just kind of scatter it over. It'll kind of combine easier, and whisk. Not with a wooden spoon or anything here, you need a whisk. Just whisk that in until it's lump-free. And that is what, with the eggs, is going to set that kind of buttermilky filling. If you are gluten-free and you had a gluten-free pie crust, which I do have on the website, by the way, a fantastic gluten-free pie crust, you can use a gluten-free 1-for-1 all-purpose flour blend. Now, Sinead, nuts. Beep, 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 beep. All of them in there, and then just mix them all together. Our filling didn't take much at all. I put my pie crust back in. It's always nice to chill a pie crust before you bake it to make sure that the butter and everything is hard. In goes our pie filling. It's a big one. Don't be afraid, fill it all the way to the top there, because there's nothing I hate more than a pie with a miserable amount of filling. That's not true. There's worse things in the world than a pie with a small amount of filling. But I think we can all agree it's pretty bad. It's pretty sad on Thanksgiving Day when you get a pie that is like not the perfect pie that you're waiting for all year long. And then the last thing we want to do is just to brush our pie crust. Ami, my culinary assistant, who also is on my podcast Need to Know with me, she always likes to do this before we add in the filling. And I told her I was going to do that, and I didn't do it. And now we're just not going to tell her that I made a mess. But it is easier sometimes if you do it before the filling goes in. That's it. Gorgeous. I'm really excited for you guys to see what this looks like when it comes out of the oven. Let's get it in there. So bake your pie at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 degrees Celsius for roughly an hour to 10 to 20 minutes. It does take some time. This is a big old pie. So I have a baking tray in my oven right now, and the reason I do this is because when you're making a pie, especially a big one like this, to avoid a soggy, underbaked bottom, put your pie on a preheated tray. So during the baking time, it will help crisp the pie from underneath, and it will make the world of difference. So do that this holiday season. That's your 6th tip for today, and that's a good one, so don't forget that. Our pie is done and it looks beautiful, and it actually smells amazing in here, just like the holiday season. So what you want to do is let this pie cool down to room temperature. What I like to do is actually make it the day before, which makes it so much easier to cut. And then when you're ready to enjoy it, cut yourself a nice big slice. And when you lift it up, you can see that beautiful thick pecan filling with all the buttermilk and all the yummy ingredients we put in. This pie is the best of both worlds because it has a soft filling, but then you have the crunch from the pecan, so you get like lovely texture, and then you get a crisp pastry. So all of those things together just make for a really lovely dessert. I can smell the fragrant pecans because we toasted them before baking, which really makes all the difference. Sometimes I find pecan pie can be a little bit sweet, but with the addition of buttermilk in here, that zippy tanginess cuts through the sugar, and it just really actually complements the pecans. Like, it's such wonderful flavor. If you're in the mood for some more holiday baking, then stick around because I've got hours of content for you to check out. I'll see you back here again, same time, same place next week.